Good evening. Welcome. It's 5:01 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and the board will go into executive session. Pam, we have a quorum. Pardon? No, we'll do it when we come back. Pam, we have a quorum. Would you please make note? My motion is to go into executive session. No.
I really don't see her.
Huh?
Dice que cuál es Liz Ryan. Pregúntale a Art que cuál es Liz Ryan. Liz Ryan.
Pam,
We don't approve it, right? Correct. Okay.
are you ready? Okay, Pam, I'd like to call the meeting out of executive session, please.
The time is now 6:48 PM, and we're back in regular session.
Judge Haggerty, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Ay, nomás porque el judge.
Thank you all for being so patient and waiting as we addressed a couple of housekeeping issues. Item 1.3.
Item 1.4, approval of minutes.
Move to approve?
Any questions? Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Ruxer. Ms. Solis. Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Mr. Fierro.
Aye. Item 1.6, open forum. We have Mr. Jose Luis Oscar. Are you available, sir? Would you like to come to the podium and... Right here, sir. Yes, sir. Please, right there.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Mr. Oscar, you have 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to, first of all, thank everybody here, the Board of Trustees, Dr. Serrata, and everybody here, and everybody listening. The reason I came here is because I felt injustice has been done. I've been accused of threatening a manager that works for this institution. From the beginning, this occurred in February of last year. I've tried to follow the chain of command, the protocol, to have this investigated to clear my name of any wrongdoing. Unfortunately, I'm still in the same situation, and this is why I come before you, hoping that maybe you could help me resolve this problem. I haven't had an investigation. I haven't, given that opportunity. And as I speak today, I brought my friends and my sons with me, and because I'm telling them that here in America, it's not like somewhere else. There's justice here. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to have my day. I think, you're innocent till you're proven guilty. This hasn't been the case for me. They just said, you're guilty, and now you're restricted from going to the math lab. And I feel that, I'm being punished now for something I never did. So I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to state that I hope one day I could finish my mission, because I'm into mathematics, and one day, hopefully, I could write a book. I have a different way of doing math, and that's the problems we're having, because I've used the methods like books. It's say a college book, and if you see how they're showing you, the answer is incorrect. Unfortunately, I only have 5 minutes to talk about this. This is a good system. The only problem is that I haven't been given an opportunity. Thank you for your time, and I hope somebody could hear me and at least help me solve my case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oscar. Mr. Chavez? Thank you, sir. Welcome, Mr. Chavez.
Members of the board and public servants. My name is Jose Chavez. I'm a former Navy man, and I've had some schooling. I'm 75 years old, and I'm here to talk on behalf of Jose Luis Oscar. He's been accused of something that is not true, and he has not had a fair hearing. No witnesses. He's got defense, but they have refused to have a hearing. Mr. Jose Luis Oscar, here's a letter that was sent by Mr. Brian Kirby. Is he here? Mr. Brian Kirby, this is from the Phi Theta Kappa. He's been invited to join the Honor Society, and also one letter from the National Society of Collegiate Scholars. He has a 3.6 GPA because he's always busy with his mathematics. But, like I said, he can't join the sororities until he solves this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chavez. Jose Chavez. Jose.
Okay. Item 1.7, Pam?
Item 1.7, presentations by individuals, groups, and organizations. Item 1.7.1, Dr. William Serrata, College President, will recognize individuals who have retired from the College District.
Chair Fierro, members of the board, a truly bittersweet moment that we have a significant number of retirees from the institution. I'd like to begin with Mary Lozoya. Can you join me, please? Where's Mary? It is a great honor to recognize Miss Mary Lozoya for her 35 years of service to El Paso Community College. Ms. Lozoya began working for the Financial Aid Office as a college work-study at Logan Heights in August of 1975, and in August of 1978 began her career as an El Paso Community College full-time employee for the Financial Aid Office as a college work-study clerk. Ms. Lozoya then served for 15 more years as a financial aid student loan officer and later on as a financial aid specialist up until the day she retired. Ms. Lozoya was always very resourceful and went over and above what was required of her duties to resolve problems and issues affecting students and their families. Her commitment to serve students and families were just a few of her greatest accomplishments while working at EPCC. Ms. Lozoya represented the El Paso Community College community through her work, her quality of work, and total commitment to student success. With most sincere gratitude, we thank Ms. Lozoya for her honesty, hard work, and commitment to the Financial Aid Office and the students she served. The Financial Aid Office wishes her the best in retirement and the next chapter in her life. Ms. Lozoya.
Congratulations. Thank you for your service.
Congratulations.
Maria Marquez. Would you please join me, Maria? Thank you. Come right up. Maria Marquez has worked and served El Paso Community College for 24 years. Mrs. Marquez started working at the EPCC Financial Aid Office as a part-time employee in 1989, where she realized this is what she wanted to do for the rest of her career. And in 1991 was hired on a full-time basis at the Financial Aid Office processing and receivable area. During this time, she served the community college students and staff, providing the best customer service and at times going beyond to assure that everyone knew EPCC is indeed the best place to start. In 2006, Mrs. Marquez began working in the intake and processing area of the Financial Aid Office up until her retirement. Her commitment to El Paso Community College, students, co-workers, and department go without question. With sincere gratitude, the Financial Aid Office and El Paso Community College thank Ms. Maria Marquez for her honesty, hard work, and commitment to our community. We wish her the very best as she starts a new chapter in her life as well. Thank you, Ms. Marquez.
Congratulations and thank you for your service. That's tough to fill. Too.
Officer Perez, would you join me at the podium, as well as Chief Ramirez? Would you please join me? Officer Perez. Officer Dagoberto Doug Perez. Officer Perez was born and raised in El Paso and joined the El Paso Community College family in 1984 as a police officer assigned to the Rio Grande campus, where he created an excellent rapport with students, staff, and faculty. Officer Perez later in his career served the EPCC community throughout the entire college district. Officer Perez received his associate degree from El Paso Community College in 1993 and later obtained a bachelor's degree from the New Mexico State University in 2000. In 2012, Officer Perez was appointed as acting police lieutenant at El Paso Community College and worked in that capacity for 2 years until the position was filled. One of Officer Perez's passions is riding motorcycles. He is a proud member of the Choir Boys Police Motorcycle Club, involved in various charity work in and around El Paso and with the states of Texas and New Mexico. Officer Perez can also be seen riding his motorcycle during funeral escorts as he helps families bid farewell to their loved ones. Officer Perez retires from El Paso Community College with 31 years of service. Through his experience and knowledge, he has brought recognition and respect to the police department and the college. Officer Perez goes beyond the call of duty to assist other officers as well as anyone else in our community. He will be missed as he bids farewell to his college family. You're too young, officer. Thank you, Officer Perez, for your years of dedicated service. And Chief, I know that you have a presentation as well.
Good afternoon, everybody. I also, real quickly, would like to present Officer Perez with a retirement badge on behalf of the police department. Thank you for your service.
Look at all the guys over there.
Yes, thank you, Chief.
Congratulations. Thanks for your service.
Maybe you can join us in support.
You already got hired at Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. Part-time.
Congratulations.
Sí, falta mucho.
Sí.
Oh, is he? Sí.
Joyce Whiteside. Would you please join me, Joyce? Joyce Whiteside was hired in 1985 as a developmental education instructor for the Center for Students with Disabilities, CSD, at El Paso Community College. She had previously taught reading, ESL, reading, Basque, and developmental math and English. As a part of the CSD team, Mrs. Whiteside applied for and was awarded the College Reading and Learning Association, CRLA, International Tutor Certification, which attributed for the Center for Students with Disabilities to be recognized as a qualified site to issue CRLA tutor certifications. Ms. Whiteside also applied for the Association of Tutoring Profession, ATP Tutoring Program Excellence Award, and brought recognition to CSD for this award in April 2007 in Orlando, Florida. Ms. Whiteside was awarded the EPCC Faculty Achievement Award, as well as the NISOT Excellence Award in 2006, and March 2007 was awarded the Diamond Award by the Diversity Program. Ms. Whiteside is also credited for writing and developing the website for the Center for Students with Disabilities, compiled a comprehensive CSD procedures book, created and started a gallery which highlights accomplishments of students with disabilities and CSD staff. Amongst her other accomplishments, Mrs. Whiteside's photographs of Peru were accepted for the front and back covers of the 2012 edition of Chrysalis. Her photograph of the, help me? No, Yangtze River? Inca River was won Best in Show in the El Paso Photo Fiesta. She has also written a couple of photo books published through blurb.com, one of them dedicated to the Scarboroughs, Paris, Chopin City. Ms. Whiteside has served on numerous college committees as well as in the community as a member of the steering committee for the El Paso Chopin Music Festival, board member of the Photo Enthusiasts of El Paso, and member of the Texas Tai Chi. While Ms. Whiteside will continue her community involvement, she is grateful for the opportunity of having served the students at El Paso Community College and for helping shape the Center for Students with Disabilities. We honor Ms. Whiteside for her 30 years of service at El Paso Community College. Thank you.
I'm gonna bring her to the next meeting.
Congratulations on working for a very special population.
Thank you for your 30 years.
Charles Yakubowski. Yes. Better known as Yak, was hired by the Center for Students with Disabilities as a student assistant in 1995. During this time, he advanced to the position of master tutor and later in 1999 attained the position of CSD campus representative at the Trans Mountain campus in charge of the day-to-day operation of the CSD office. Through his life membership in the Veterans of Foreign Wars, he is credited for persuading the Post to make a $250 donation to the first EPCC Buddy Walk. He is also credited for starting the Trans Mountain campus garden in the patio area off the CSD office. The garden was later dedicated to him in 2007 for all his hard work. Mr. Yakubowski, Yak, completed both the Fundamental and Advanced Leadership Academy classes, served on various committees such as the EPCC Safety Committee, the IE, Institutional Effectiveness Trans Mountain Space Committee, the Veterans Day Committee, the 9/11 Patriot Day Committee, and the Military Marketing Initiative Committee. He was the chairperson of the District Safety Committee and served as chairperson for the Trans Mountain Institutional Effectiveness Committee as well. Prior to his tenure at El Paso Community College, Mr. Yakubowski served in the United States Army for 20 years, earning several awards and recognitions. He continues his patriotism by being a member of the Veterans Summit with the Fort Bliss Garrison Command and American Legion Post 692. Aside from all his accomplishments, most importantly, he is a devoted husband, father of 2 sons, and a grandfather. Mr. Yakubowski, we honor you for your 18 years of service at El Paso Community College. Thank you.
All right.
Congratulations, sir. Boy, they're losing several. That's disability.
What?
Yes. Students with disabilities.
Item 1.7.2, Dr. Sarata will recognize Ms. Cristina Frescas, Research Associate, Office of Institutional Research, with a certificate from the Association for Institutional Research.
Chair Fierro, members of the board, and Ms. Friascas, can you please join me? You all know our commitment to making data-driven decisions based on what's best for student success and facilitating student success through data. One of the opportunities, Dr. Kay has done a tremendous job along with Vice President Candelas and so many of the other staff of really working hard on data. You've seen our presentations on the dashboards that Dr. Iron and her team have built. One of the opportunities that we had, one of the nominations that came forward, again, credit Vice President Candelas and Dr. Kay for their leadership, was the opportunity for us to submit and nominate an individual to go through the Association for Institutional Research. So allow me, as we recognize Ms. Frescas, to read the letter that was sent to us. Dear President Serrata, thank you for nominating Cristina Frescas for a Data and Decisions Academy Achieving the Dream Presidential Scholarship from the Association for Institutional Research, AIR. We are pleased to report that Cristina has completed the 2 courses, Overview of Survey Design and Designing IR Research, covered by the Presidential Scholarship. This accomplishment required a significant investment of time, completion of assignments, and interaction with mentors to demonstrate content mastery. We congratulate your nominee in achieving this important step and building a solid foundation of skills and knowledge to support data-informed decision-making on your campus. So, as the nominator, we ask for your assistance in recognizing Cristina's success, and we are happy to do that here at El Paso Community College. So I would like to present Ms. Frescas the Data and Decisions Academy Certificate of Completion 2014 Achieving the Dream Presidential Scholarship. Cristina Frescas is hereby recognized for successful completion of Overview of Survey Design and Designing IR Research. Ms. Frescas.
Item 1.7.3, Dr. Sarata will present the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for fiscal year 2012-2013 to Dr. Ernst D. Roberts II, Vice President of Administration and Financial Operations, Ms. Josette Shaughnessy, Associate Vice President, Budget and Financial Services, and Mr. Fernando Flores, Comptroller.
So if you all can join me, please. So one of the first documents that I requested upon being a finalist for this position was the CAFR. And so the CAFR is just an incredibly important document that this institution has been recognized. I'll let Ms. Shaughnessy speak more to the number of years, which is incredible that we've received this award. But it is truly a reflection of the hard work that each of the members behind me and their respective teams, Dr. Roberts, Ms. Shaughnessy, Mr. Flores, and their teams, as well as the entire college, put forth, and how serious they take, obviously, what we do with regards to budget and financial resources. This is a Government Finances Officer Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting presented to El Paso County Community College District in Texas by, you'll have to tell me the name, Jeffrey's last name, but the Executive Director and CEO for the Government Finance Officers Association. It's on a granite slab, so it's really heavy. But I'd like to congratulate Mr. Flores, Ms. Shaughnessy, and Dr. Roberts, and please, if you'll share a few words with the board.
Well, we've been receiving this award since 1996, and actually this is truly a team effort. This report would not be submitted to the GFOA without the hard work of all the Budget and Financial Services team, the ISCs that are helping us basically printing the report, my staff, Sandy McHare, Juanita Martinez, that help us compile that report that we have to submit within the timeline. And actually, we are working on the 2014 CAFR as we speak. And again, thank you very much for your support. But again, it's a team effort, and we appreciate Dr. Serrata giving us this recognition year after year, because it's truly reflects the work of a team that is usually works behind the scenes. And so we feel like it's very important to be recognized year after year. So thank you so much for your support.
Not here, but just so I can get one.
Good job.
I know. Do you have any extras of these? I know, but I didn't get one. There's only 8 there. Thank you. So heavy. Check it out.
Item 1.7.4, Mr. Jeff Bridgens, Senior Manager, Moss Adams LLP CPAs, will present the audit results of the fiscal year 2014 financial statements.
Dr. Serrata, members of the board, thank you for your time this evening. Again, my name is Jeff Bridgens, and I will be communicating the results of the 2014 audit. First of all, our dating on our materials here, we have January 12th is the date that we met with your cabinet and did a much more detailed deep dive into the audit results and the required communications. We're going to do an overview of the important highlights from that meeting. So tonight we'll cover kind of our scope of services, the key matters that were required under professional standards to be discussed with those charged with governance. We'll go over some financial highlights, and finally I have some closing comments with regards to some important new accounting standards that I feel are important that you're aware of moving into 2015. So scope of services. We are engaged to perform an audit of the institution's financial statements and its supplemental information. The audit also includes what we call a single audit, and so that is an audit of the college's major federal programs in terms of the federal grant money that it's receiving, and it's also its major federal state grants as well. And so that kind of encompasses the overall body of the work that we're engaged to perform. Before I go further into our presentation here this evening, I would just like to thank Josette Shaughnessy and Fernando Flores for their tremendous effort in getting ready for an audit. Just to give you a sense of some of the timing, we show up in earnest in September and are here October, November, working hard through the end of the year in order to produce and issue an opinion on the college's financial statements. It's a lot of work that they assist us with in terms of audit preparation, and you have an excellent staff to work with. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that and communicate that to you this evening. Just a couple of highlights in terms of what it is that we're doing in terms of our audit. We're engaged to express an opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements and whether or not it's fairly presented in accordance with an acceptable or generally accepted accounting framework. In the case of the college, that would be the GASB reporting framework. An audit doesn't relieve management of its responsibilities. The financial statements are solely the responsibility of management as well. An audit is not absolute assurance, but it is reasonable assurance. We don't audit every transaction. If we did, we would be on site pretty much throughout the year, and I don't think Josette and her staff wants a continuous audit or a group of auditors in her offices for an entire year. But we do enough work to opine and say that we've done enough work to say that the financial statements are fairly presented. In our audit, we also consider in our planning of the audit the college's internal controls with regard to financial reporting. We're not performing an audit of those internal controls, but we're using them in our risk-based approach as we plan our audit. So we're not expressing any sort of opinion on the college's internal controls. If matters were to turn up there, we would highlight those to management, to the cabinet, or to this organization in a written type of form of communication if there were significant items there, but we're not forming an opinion on those controls. And then finally, we're responsible for communicating certain matters to you and to those charged with governance. As I said earlier, we had met on January 12th, discussed a variety of items with your cabinet, and we're kind of going through the highlights of those tonight. With respect to other information in documents containing the audited financial statements, the prior year certificate of achievement was just presented for the institution's CAFR. That is another document that's in addition to the financial statements that we issue our opinion to. And so we do have some responsibilities with regard to the CAFR each year as well in terms of reading that information, making sure it's consistent with the audited financial statements that we actually issue our opinion on. Okay, so those were kind of the basics. For now, we're going to move into some of the highlights from our meeting earlier in January. First is kind of the qualitative aspects of accounting practices. And so the notes to the financial statements disclose the institution's accounting policies or significant accounting policies. Those are really important in terms of understanding the transactions or the significant transactions that are reported within the college's financial statements. And one of the requirements is that if there's any changes in those policies, that we make you aware of those significant changes. Well, 2014 was an implementation year for something called GASB Statement 65, which is a new accounting pronouncement that essentially required management go through a whole host of types of transactions to consider whether or not they need to be reclassified from either assets or liabilities to something called deferred outflows of resources or deferred inflows of resources. And so those are kind of new terms that are starting to creep into government's financial statements under its reporting framework. So they're different than you would see on a balance sheet, but essentially management had to go through and determine whether or not certain transactions fit the new accounting standards under GASB Statement 65. And in fact, once they applied that, there were 2 transactions that were significant in terms of having to be reclassed from assets or liabilities up to these things called deferred outflows of resources or deferred inflows of resources. And so that terminology is something you're going to start to see more and more of as accounting standards progress in the government world. We'll talk a little bit at the end about GASB Statement 68 about pensions, but that will also necessitate the reporting of additional deferred outflows of resources and deferred inflows of resources on a recurring annual basis. So there are elements in your financial statements that you're going to see more frequently. In terms of accounting estimates and estimates of financial information are embedded in every single set of financial statements that are issued. The college is no exception. We highlight to you kind of that is an integral part of financial reporting, and some of the most, probably one of the most important estimates that are present in the college's financial statements is the estimate of depreciation and useful lives of capital assets. When we say capital assets, we mean things like buildings and infrastructure, kind of the hard infrastructure of the college, equipment, those types of things require estimates on their useful lives and depreciation. And so if we were to say, well, what's the most important accounting estimate, that's probably the most important accounting estimate that's present within the college's financial statements, given the size of those assets that are reported in the financial statements. We also go through and highlight what are important note disclosures. I mentioned one already, which is the significant accounting policies. I really believe those are critical. If you're going to understand the elements that are reported in the financial statements, you really have to understand, well, what's the institution's policies for accounting for certain transactions? When is revenue recognized? How are expenses recognized? Assets capitalized? Those types of issues are disclosed in the notes of the financial statements. The other important note would be any of the notes regarding bonds payable that are also disclosed in Note 6 of the financial statements. Other significant audit findings and issues. During the course of an audit, we discuss a variety of issues with management. We have questions that come up. Things that we need explaining. So there's a whole host of accounting principles and discussions that go on. We did report a couple of items that through those discussions that came up in the single audit, and I'll kind of point those out to you in the financial statements. I think at this point I'm going to actually turn over to those financial statements just to kind of briefly cover those, go over those 2 findings with you in brief terms, and then we'll kind of just go through some of the financial highlights that are the remaining in my presentation. So first, in the financial statements, one of the things I want to point out is we are issuing or have issued what's called an unmodified opinion on the college's financial statements. That's a clean opinion. It's what you want to have issued. And so we did issue a clean opinion on the financial statements. And we also issued a clean opinion on the college's, unmodified opinions on the college's compliance with both major federal programs that we tested and major state grant programs that we tested as well. And so our reports reflect that as well. One of the items that I would point out with regard to the scope of work that we performed that is a little bit different for 2014 is we tested a lot more federal programs than we have in recent years. And so in recent years, because of the way the formulas calculate out and the risk-based approach that we've taken, generally 1 or 2 programs are tested on an annual basis. Because those other programs had not been tested in previous years, in the 2 previous years, it necessitated us testing 7 major programs this year. So basically, we tripled the size of the single audit that we performed in terms of the major federal grant programs. Out of the results of that testing, again, unmodified opinions on major federal compliance with the programs tested. Back on page 53, we have a schedule called the Schedule of Federal Findings and Question Costs. And so this really gives you a snapshot of the audit results on both the financial statements and the single audit. And then this is also where we include the two findings that we had. One with regard to student financial aid in terms of a reporting requirement that was not met. And then one for another program, for the Youth Build program, in which something came to our attention simply by virtue of management bringing it to our attention. They had a federal kind of agency oversight audit that found some deficiencies. So we went through and for the ones that were identified in that agency audit, there was one item where prior written approval for a vendor relationship hadn't been met, and so those are the two only items that we have in terms of the findings or question costs for the 2014 audit. So really a great job to your staff. These are very minor, in my opinion, in terms of the items. It's kind of the nature of the beast when you get to federal grant reporting. You're taking a sample, or you're following a very strict black and white requirement. It either met it or did not. So that's what you're seeing reflected in your financial statements and in the findings. I've also prepared just a few brief slides on some of the more trend information, so to speak, in terms of giving you some 3-year information. And so the first slide I have really goes over assets and those deferred outflows of resources that are reported. As you can see from our graph, cash and investments and capital assets are remain the predominant assets that were reported in the college's financial statements. And then the deferred outflows, and you might ask, well, what is this deferred outflow? What was the nature of the reclassification that was moved there? That is all student financial aid that was prepaid on before the fiscal period started. And so before, those were always classified as a prepaid asset. They just moved down to this other category called the deferred outflow of resources, and they have the same effect on net position. In terms of the liabilities, again, long-term debt, we see a downward trend. So the college's debt load is being repaid. And then on here, deferred inflows of resources. That's all the federal money coming in to pay for student financial aid that's received prior to the timing in which it can be recognized, which is the 2015 fiscal year. So in previous financial statements, that figure would have been reported as deferred revenue. Now we're just calling it a deferred inflow of resources within the statement of net position. In terms of your net position, again, capital assets are a significant portion, so you can see that really hasn't changed in terms of the net position that's invested in that capital asset structure. I think the key takeaway from this slide is if you look at your unrestricted net position, you have an upward positive trend in those unrestricted resources that can be used to advance the college's purposes. In terms of revenues, the operating statement or the flow statement breaks those down between operating revenues, and then I've got another slide for non-operating revenues. Again, probably no surprise, tuition and fees remain the predominant revenue stream for operating revenues. If I go to the non-operating revenues, this is where resources are being provided to the college to support its operations. Things like state appropriations, taxes, federal revenue coming to assist the furtherance of the college's mission is what you see in the non-operating section. And then in terms of the college's expenses, instruction is number one in terms of the operating expenses. And then the other one that you see is scholarships expense, and that's the decrease there is kind of a function of enrollment that you'd see in the financial statements. So that kind of brings me to the conclusion of my presentation. There are a couple of items, though, that I think are important for you to be aware of moving into your next fiscal year in terms of financial reporting. 2015, the college will have to implement something called GASB Statement 68 that has to do with reporting net pension liability information. And so the college participates in a defined benefit pension system. Its fair share of that obligation is going to be required by GASB Statement 68 to be reported as a liability on its statement of net position. And so depending on how the actuarial calculations work out for those and the plan's fiduciary net position, that could be a significant new liability that the college is having to bring on to its books, and will require a lot of careful coordination between the college and the plan it participates in. So that it's very key that you understand that this is an implementation year. In terms of this, like the size of kind of the magnitude, it's probably the most significant accounting standard to hit governments in probably the last decade, I would say. So it's a significant new accounting standard. The other item that I would bring to your attention is, we've talked a lot tonight about the single audit in terms of the audit of federal grants. The federal government has kind of undertook over the last several years something called uniform grant reform that is kind of intended to consolidate down the grant requirements across all the federal agencies in terms of the compliance requirements. And it has some new requirements that the college may or may not have to meet in terms of its responsibilities for having controls over those federal compliance requirements. I bring it to your attention because those requirements, that uniform grant reform, really went into effect for new grants beginning in December. So from that point forward, the college is really subject to these new requirements. And so I think it's also because there's a change, it's important that you're aware of that change as well. So that really brings me to my conclusion of my presentation. And thank you again for your attention. And again, you have an excellent finance staff to work with based on my experience.
I have a question. I have a question, sir. Can you explain a little bit more of page 53 that you referenced on the report, the report issued unmodified?
Sure. So when we say unmodified opinion, that is a clean opinion on each of those various programs that we tested. So in that box that you see on page 53, that's going to list the actual federal grant program that we tested the compliance requirements for. And so when we say unmodified, we've issued a clean opinion on the college's compliance with those with the direct material requirements for those various programs that we tested. So it was a clean opinion on all
okay,
grants.
So
that
the
we
significant deficiency identified, that is one that's going to be corrected or was already corrected?
Yeah, so that has to do with the findings in terms of how we classify them. And when we say significant deficiency, that's really anything that rises to the level of reporting in this report or to you. And so it's kind of an onerous term, and that we're required to use. But anytime we've had significant deficiencies with the college in the past, those have been promptly corrected. I would assume that next year when we look at these, you'll see a page on here saying resolved.
And on page 14? When you make a statement that the college has the lowest tuition rate in the region and the lowest tax rate of all major taxing entities of the El Paso County, while still maintaining quantity and quality of services to the student population, do you take the time to compare us to the other entities?
Right. So on page 14, you're looking at something called management's discussion and analysis. And so it gives you a kind of a plain language overview of the financial changes. This is something that's prepared by management, and it's actually something that's not covered by our opinion. We do go through and read it and relate it back to the financial information that's reported, but there may be things in the management's discussion analysis that we don't directly test.
Okay.
So any of the discussions or questions for management's discussion analysis, I would direct towards Josette or Fernie to address those specifically.
And I just wanted to make sure that the Sci Civic Association takes note of that statement. Thank you.
Mr. Bridgens, thank you very much. I just going back to what Dr. Graham had mentioned on page 53. I know it's just semantics, but you did check off the significant deficiency that was identified, and you go to page 54, and that's I wrote down it was the student financial aid reporting, whatever, that wasn't met. But then you also, in your presentation, you said it was really a minor, like of all the things, it really was minor. I mean, we still have a great audit, et cetera, right? So, yeah. But it's just that because the only box you could check off had the word significant deficiency. Is that
Right.
right?
So we're really boxed into, as auditors, as classifying a finding as either a significant deficiency or material weakness. And in our audit reports, we define what those are. And so we're really saying when we call it a significant deficiency, that's a much, much lower threshold than a material weakness. So we're not talking a major finding. It would be called a material weakness if it was. So kind of that next level down, and it's quite a ways down, at least in my opinion, is something called a significant deficiency in internal controls. And so that's the terminology is under the audit standards that we're required to report. And again, if you look at what the condition was, 1 of 25
Right,
is,
and then-
is an item that we found.
and then you have a recommendation for it. So, but next year, or we'll see then, hopefully, that this area, these findings, it will have been resolved, or?
I believe so,
Okay.
yes.
And then one last question, Mr. Bridgens. So the two new reporting requirements that we're supposed to be on the lookout, I'll probably forget a year from now, but is that anywhere in this nice little book that you presented to be like for a forecast or something, or is that something that just Josette and Fernie will have to all be reminded of as we're going through our...
Josette and Fernie should be reminding you, and my guess is they will get plenty of help from either the pension system or the coordinating board as well in terms of the implementation of GASB Statement 68.
Okay, but do you have that in here anywhere? In your
They're
sort of just as like a forecast or things to be look out on the horizon, or is that just
Yeah.
something you
Let me check
verbally
one.
represented?
Those items are specifically not stated in the statements. No.
They're not?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Any
A
other
very
questions?
good report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for the
very much. I
information.
appreciate your time.
Item 1.7.5, optional presentations will be made by the presidents of the Classified Staff Association, the Professional Staff Association, the Faculty Association, and the Student Government Association.
Good evening, Chairman of the Board, board members, Dr. Serrata, members of Cabinet, and everyone in the audience. I would like to just address some of the programs that the CSA accomplished over the fall semester. And one of them I'm going to begin with is actually not a CSA-sponsored event, but we were asked to include ourselves on a haunted hallway that was actually the brainchild of Sandra Gutierrez from the President's Office. I was told that many years ago that the ASC buildings would participate in holiday festivals such as Halloween or a fall festival. And this is the first time in many years that this was done. It was actually a collaborative event that included Jenny Giron and her IT department, as well as Nasser Hamden for donating the use of his decorations, which we really enjoyed. Hector Serrano allowed us to use the decorations from his theatrical group. Alex Hernandez and the Human Resource Development Department contributed snacks. Financial Services contributed manpower. At the end of the day, at 5 p.m., you could find myself, Rosa Chavez, Pedro Favela, and Efrain Mendoza decorating and climbing ladders along with Sandra to set up this haunted hallway. The physical plant personnel helped us to do the heavy lifting and move the pillars into place. Cosmetology provided face painting. Media Services provided the sound effects and the PA system. Marketing promoted our event, including posting pictures on the EPCC Facebook page, so you could get a good scare if you want to go look at them. Jesus Chavez from the El Paso Sheriff's Department helped us out with decorating. And also Tim, and I'm sorry that I do not recall his name, was our resident ghoul. He dressed up and decided to scare people with a chainsaw. And as I said, it wasn't a CSA-sponsored event in of its own, but campuses throughout the college district were doing something, and again, this was one of the first times in many years that the ASC has done anything like that, and it brought people together as a group, and it shows what we can do with just a little bit of collaboration. So I'd like to thank everybody who contributed and participated and who enjoyed the haunted hallway. Thank you so much. I would like to now discuss the results of our 2014 turkey drive. We collected $644.50. A total of 114 turkeys were purchased and donated and distributed. Each area nonprofit received 38 turkeys. And in comparison to last year, that was an overall increase of 55% in monetary donations. Last year, we collected $416. It was also a 200% increase in the turkeys that were purchased and donated. Last year, we collected and purchased 38 turkeys. We'd like to recognize individual contributions by Cecilia Ponce, Administrative Assistant from the Rio Grande campus, who contributed a $100 cash donation. Also, Instructor Ivan Iniguez, Biology Instructor at the Northwest campus, turned this into a class project for his students. And they netted 64 turkeys that were donated. And we really do appreciate that. The students really pulled through and came forward for the CSA and for the community. Also, Beatriz Ortega from the QEP department assisted us with the distribution. And we also had some area middle and high school students who were the children of some of our CSA officers who helped in participating with the distribution. So they got to see a little bit of what community college does outside of an education, and we hope that it inspired them to continue in their civic duties and also to continue with their education once they complete their middle and high school educations. We hosted our Christmas dance. Out of 225 tickets that were printed, we sold 201. The event is entirely funded by revenue generated from our craft fairs. So for those of you at campus who see our craft fairs that are being held once a month at the rotating campuses, we appreciate you going there and purchasing from our vendors because that keeps them coming back. Our civic duties aren't ending there. Thanks to the help of Mr. Fierro, we actually secured a $2,000 donation from Mr. Joe Lopez of Lopez Marketing Group. We didn't receive that in time for that to be included in our turkey drive, so we're using that as our Hunger Doesn't Take a Holiday initiative. And it will be used to actually benefit a recently started up nonprofit that's from the Fabens location. It's called Restoring Our Community. It services the Lower Valley area, the towns of Fabens and, yes ma'am, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm blocking the light.
Oh.
Glare. No,
Too much glare, guys. And it services the Lower Valley towns that are somewhat overlooked and don't get the help from the major organizations here in El Paso because they lay on the outskirts. That includes Sanelli, Fabens, Tornillo, Clint, and up to Hudspeth County, so they don't go any further than that. But we're looking forward to getting those funds in and getting the food donations to them. So, Mr. Fierro, thank you for putting that on the radar for us and helping us to secure that. We couldn't have done it without you.
Cash the check quickly.
The checks, 2 $1,000 checks.
Oh, good.
And for the spring, the CSA is also beginning their Employee of the Year celebrations. We are now accepting nominations for full-time and part-time Employee of the Year. This is a very important award in that it recognizes the contributions and achievements of the classified employees. The review committee who oversees the nomination process is actually comprised of independent representatives from the 5 different constituency groups. So we will have an administrator, we'll have a professional staff member, a classified staff member, a member from, let's see if I got everybody, administrative, professional, classified, and we'll also have a student representative, and I'm missing one, and I apologize, I just can't think off the top of my head here.
Dr. Ramirez.
Pardon me?
Faculty.
Faculty. I am so sorry, Dr. Ramirez. My apologies there. Your contribution isn't overlooked, believe me. The recipients are selected based upon the established criteria that's set forth by the CSA, the knowledge of their job, the quality of the work, their commitment to customer service, which is paramount here with the college, and their own professional and personal growth and development. Most importantly, all the nominees should exemplify the standards and core values that you expect from community college employees and that the college itself deems as being important. And they must support the mission and vision of EPCC to help further its strategic goals and to stand by the core values that make EPCC, the El Paso Community College, not just the best place to start, but as employees, the best place to be. Your Employee of the Years will be recognized at the 2015 Annual College Recognition Dinner, and that will be held on April 24th. So for those of you who are checking your email, you'll see the notices going out announcing the nomination forms. So please fill that out if you feel anybody is worthy of recognition, because we do really want to honor them. And all of this cannot be done without the CSA officers, who I am very honored and privileged to work with, and a few of them are here tonight, so I would like to recognize them while I have the opportunity. Ms. Clara Topete. She is a vice president, and she serves the Mission del Paso campus. Cecilia Montoya. She is the secretary, my lady in black. She is from the Rio Grande campus. And lastly, Marisol Negrete, the vice president from our VB campus, Valle Verde. Again, none of this can be possible without the support, dedication, and hard work that they contribute, but also we would like to thank the administrators who not only encourage them to be a part of the association, but are very flexible in giving them the time to perform the duties that are required of them as officers. Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
President Fierro, members of the board, Dr. Serrata, cabinet, staff, and community. Consistency and principle are institutional values. This institution's procedures, when followed, maintains an integrity as a value that we all will agree on. Thus, it is unfair, disconcerting, and disrespectful when said procedures are circumvented. The personnel section in this month's board agenda lists 22 non-faculty institutional funded personnel actions. There are 14 competitive appointments that followed established college procedures. However, there are 2 non-competitive appointments. Even 1 non-competitive appointment is too many. 3 personnel actions are appointments not subject to the rigors of open competition. 2 of the appointments are for additional duties. Traditionally, temporary increase in duties carries a 6% increase, as stated in 3.12.00.10, numeral 7, that it's normally yet these garner a 10% increase. They are interim appointments from January 1st through August 31st, yet enough time to give a competitive edge or advantage to a person when the position is open. And EPCC has a history, a culture of extending appointments. Appointments should never be self-perpetuating. EPCC also has a culture of letting interim morph into permanent, particularly when the interim position was originally a non-competitive appointment. These types of personnel actions are not acceptable and must be reviewed and scrutinized. 4 of this month's personnel actions, the 2 temporary increases in responsibilities and the 2 non-competitive positions are irregular and exceptions to college procedures. College procedure should apply equally to all potential job applicants. Instead, why not wait for the Evergreen report? It is due this fiscal quarter. EPCC paid Evergreen to make objective, professional position assessments and recommendations. Let's analyze it and let's heed its advice. Any and all exceptions to college procedure erodes the confidence and faith in our college, and in the eyes of our employees and the public, it's important we all follow same. While putting this information together, I gave a heads up to our president that I was going to give this presentation. He did me the great courtesy of calling me back, and we discussed and we agreed we were going to meet on this issue. Thank you. Dan Gaitan.
Thank you, Mr. Gaitan.
Dr. Ramirez.
I know it's not me getting shorter. Okay. Good evening, Dr. Serrata, esteemed members of the board. Well, no time has been wasted this semester in scheduling numerous committee meetings, most notably those focusing on academic dishonesty and faculty evaluations, and beginning new initiatives such as the early alert system, starting first at the Valle Verde campus this semester. We believe that this system will help both faculty and the first-time student find a more personalized method of attaining academic success. Sandra Lujan must be lauded for her tenacity in bringing this system to fruition. Most welcome for faculty is another new system developed by IT under the direction of Deans Badillo and Webb, and recently accepted by the faculty committee to upload final grades instead of having to schlep piles of paper records to the registrar's office at semester's end. We thank everyone who participated in bringing this program to fruition, including the faculty who piloted it last semester. We now look forward to other forms, such as student drops, being available online in the very near future. Valle Verde faculty sends kudos to the physical plant for having finally solved the traffic issue at the Hunter Drive entrance. Since the opening of the campus nearly 40 years ago, the configuration of that particular entrance has been a daytime nightmare, and numerous mishaps which could have ended in serious collisions have been the fear of many a driver. It is delightful to drive into a traffic pattern that actually makes sense. And now that that problem has been solved, perhaps physical plant will have the time to address the unacceptable and uncivilized conditions encountered in the men's bathroom in the A building. An area of grave concern to faculty this evening, and I do assure you that I have not spoken to Mr. Gaitan, is indeed the problem of non-competitive appointments which affect instruction. Non-competitive appointments have been an issue at EPCC for many, many years. And although faculty have spoken out against the practice, set appointments, as we see this evening, continue. When a position affecting instruction opens, it should, in good conscience, be advertised immediately, notwithstanding the procedure, but we continue to drag our feet only to find it necessary to make an interim appointment. In theory, with events beyond our control, for instance, there are times when an interim appointment is indeed necessary. But it becomes suspect when there has been plenty of time to go through the process of competitive advertising. And later, it paves the way for frustration and mistrust when those interim positions magically become non-competitively permanent, as has so often been the case. It may well be that the person obtaining the non-competitive appointment is indeed the best person for the job. But if that's the case, let him apply and win the position. EPCC must not allow herself to be involved in these situations, be they intentional or lack of due diligence. All of us must strive to be beyond reproach without the vaguest hint of impropriety in our actions. On a lighter note, faculty are indeed pleased to participate in the upcoming master planning session, specifically addressing program migration to include recommendations of the ideal programs to go into Fort Bliss campus. We also look forward to the results of the compensation study. Although faculty salaries were not originally included in the scope of the study, our request for input and consideration was heard, and we are confident that the study will reflect the beggarly condition of our salaries, especially considering the fact that we have been recognized as one of Aspen's top 10 community colleges in the nation. Whatever result that reward may be on March 18th, we will remain extremely proud of the accomplishments of our institution. We thank you for your kind attention, and with that, we bid you good night.
Chair, if you are members of the board, thank you, Dr. Ramirez, Mr. Gaitan, Ms. Jauregui, for all of your comments. Chair, as part of my report, I know that it's further in the agenda. However, I do have a presentation as part of my report with some of our colleagues and visitors from outside of the institution. With your permission, I'd like to call upon them to go forward with that presentation now. It's Project Hire El Paso, Post-Secondary Opportunities for People with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. It is Deborah Peterson from the Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services, as well as Rick Raso, Volar Center for Independent Living. Expanding opportunity for more students to enroll and succeed in college is vital to building a strong economy and a strong middle class. Given the opportunity, access, and support, students with intellectual and developmental disabilities who receive support services in college settings can have great outcomes, much like any other student with the support. Project Hire El Paso proposes to provide a student support system using educational coaches to ensure academic and vocational success for students with disabilities participating in certificate-level programs. So with that, I ask Ms. Peterson and Mr. Raso to go forward. And I would like to thank Dr. Graham for also her role in ensuring that they were on our agenda this evening. So please.
Thank you, Dr. Serrata. Board members, Mr. Chair, members of the Cabinet, we're here to share with you what we think is a very, very critical need in our community. We'd like to begin by sharing with you our objectives for this evening. Our first is to establish the importance of post-secondary opportunities for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Second, present the use of an educational coach model to promote student success. Number three, we would like to request an EPC decision-making individual to work with the existing Project Hire partnership to formalize a plan. And our goal is that in April, we could come back to you with a formalized plan and a model that we would recommend. Why is post-secondary education important? Every year, hundreds of students with disabilities graduate from our local high schools in the El Paso and Hudspeth County. And just like all other students, they graduate with dreams, goals, and aspirations to continue their education after they graduate from high school. And we know that's important. Unfortunately, for some of our students, those opportunities do not exist because there are no appropriate programs and support services to provide to them. We know education shapes the future of all students, and that includes students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. All across the nation, colleges are rethinking and developing programs for students with disabilities. And at this time, we'd like to show you a short video that will highlight for you some of those programs across the nation.
Question. Can you tell me about your college experience?
Sure. I came from a really small town. I loved it a lot. Really taught me a lot about life and life skills. Helped me come out of my shell.
College was great. It set me on the path that I'm on today. It took me to Peace Corps, and now it took me to a new job.
Oh, college was great. I owe my career to it. I even met my wife there.
Who do you think should go to college?
I think everyone should go to college.
I think everybody should go to college.
Anybody that wants to.
What about people with intellectual disabilities?
What?
That's a good question.
I never really thought about that.
I have pretty high expectations for myself, and then there's always the expectations of the professors, and it's the blend between the two that is most important. I've always found a way to do well, or do my best in all of my courses, no matter what.
I do know that she belongs in this classroom because she has a lot to offer, and she thinks about the works that we're discussing, and the class accepts her on that level completely.
The people in school see, oh, she has a disability, don't talk to her, she's so different from everybody else. But here, they accept you as who you are, and they say, you're a college student, you're a human being, you're the same thing here.
I think there's so many ways how kids can look at so many challenges for every phase. There's so many ways how people can change.
The University of North Florida is a great experience for people to relate to college. And they did not ask me if I wanted to go to college. I chose to go to college because I thought that that would be a better path in life for me. It's freedom, basically.
The dream is me going to college and being like a graphic designer or something to do in art. Art is like my passion.
All my family pretty much went to college, and I said, why not me? Even though I have a disability, I can still go. I can go anywhere I want to go.
We're helping these particular students become more productive citizens and more well-rounded citizens of our country. I think it's just really important. We don't have throwaway people.
It's really enriched the people on this campus, and it's just made it a much nicer place to work. It just amazes me how well it's gone and how proud everybody is of it, both internally and externally, and what it's done for these kids' lives.
We are working with a very important part of our population that has traditionally been underserved. A second major reason is because Kennesaw State itself wants to be as inclusive as it possibly can and provide high-quality education for anyone who wants to obtain that education. And the third is possibly the most basic of the three. It's just simply the right thing to do.
The revolution is kids with disabilities going to college and having the opportunities. And I just really want to stoke those flames and get that fire, that revolution really going, because this is where the revolution begins. It begins now. It begins with us.
As you can see, all across the nation, colleges are rethinking their programs and services for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. In Texas, and I'll wait for the slide to come up real quick. In Texas, we have some programs, but not as many as we need to have for a state as big as Texas. To give you a few examples, Project Hire, which is very similar to our Project Hire El Paso, is presently located at South Texas College, where they use the educational coach model. We have the Vast Academy in Houston Community College that has been in existence for over 20 years. We have a great program, the STEPS program at Austin Community College, which has been very successful for the past 12 years. In addition, we have Project CASE at Texas Tech University that is for individuals with high-functioning autism. And believe it or not, students with intellectual disabilities are even taking classes at the University of Texas at El Paso. I think all of us can agree that expanding the opportunity for more students to enroll in and succeed in college is critical. We know that is the pathway to success for our students. Unfortunately, when we think about people with disabilities and we look at the employment statistics, they don't look very good. A recent survey found that only 14% were competitively employed. Another one showed that 32% of adults ages 20 to 30 having employment compared to 74% of people without disabilities. In order to look at and establish the need, I guess one of the things we can look at is our population. And here you find the top 10 states with the largest population of individuals with disabilities. And if you look at Texas, we have a population of 11.5%, almost 3 million people with disabilities who have the same dreams, the same goals, the same aspirations as everyone else, and their families also for them. More specifically, here in our region, last year, 2014, we graduated 856 students with disabilities. Again, many of them hoping that their next step would be to continue their education and their training. Why are we here? We always hear that El Paso Community College is a great place to start. It is a great place to start. However, for some of our students, the options are very limited. And being a community college, this is really the only option for some of our students. But we need to create the programs and the support systems for them to be successful. So what are we proposing? We're proposing that by summer 2015, we provide a student support system using an educational coach model to ensure academic and vocational success for students with disabilities participating in certificate level programs. We feel that that's a good opportunity to start to pilot this model to show that students can be successful when given the appropriate support. My colleague will now share with you how we propose to do it.
We propose to do it by providing wraparound services and academic support to the student both inside and outside the classroom setting. The educational coach model will closely resemble an existing model that is at South Texas College, and I'm not sure, Dr. Serrato, you may be familiar with that. The educational coach will be a trained individual that will provide additional support to help the student reach their training goals by modeling and teaching how to be a successful student. The educational coach can assist the student, depending on the student's individual needs, with activities including, but not limited to, pre-planning, academic coaching, addressing communication, and referrals to outside resources. And here's the great part. Interns will provide the educational coaching at no cost. as part of their internship hours to include the University of Texas at El Paso Masters of Rehabilitation Counseling Program students and other related graduate program. So what's the point? Well, Rick, tell us, what's the point?
Well, the point is that given the opportunity, access, and support, students with intellectual and developmental disabilities who receive support services in college settings can have great outcomes. A recent study that was done regarding these programs showed that students who participate in post-secondary education after they graduate from high school are more likely to have a job. More specifically, 9 out of 10 were able to find work related to their training and their studies that they had while they participated in the program. Currently, we have a group of project partners that has been working on this critical need. There you will see the Department of Assistive and Rehabilitation Services, Education Service Center Region 19, our local independent school districts, the University of Texas at El Paso, Volar Center for Independent Living, and the Workforce Solution. This is a group that has been working on this for approximately about 3 years. We've been learning, we've had training of which some of your staff and even some of your board members have attended. And so we've begun that process of learning and identifying possibly how could we begin to develop these programs and these support programs here at the El Paso Community College. In addition, through our work that we've been working, we've received endorsements from different coalitions in the community, from Senator Rodriguez, the League of United Latin American Citizens, and the University of Texas at El Paso. So the support is there. We know we need this. What are some of the proposed costs and possible funding sources? Well, we start off with tuition and fees. We know that many of our students can qualify for financial aid. However, we have the Division for Assistive and Rehabilitation Services that will also provide funding for tuition and fees as well. We have scholarships. That would include books and supplies, assistive technology, which El Paso Community College Center for Students with Disabilities already does a great job. Our educational coaches, as Debbie mentioned to you, our goal is to use interns from the Master Rehab Counseling Program at the university, but explore other interns that would benefit not only from the experience of working with students with disabilities at the college level, but would also be able to provide support to help them to be successful. We would need initially some classroom space for initial training and orientation to prepare the students before every semester. And if the program continues to grow and exist, we know that we will need a coordinator to be able to coordinate the program. What are the benefits of Project Hire El Paso? We know that when students have an educational coach and support, then they can be successful. It will encourage student self-advocacy, build student self-determination, confidence, empowerment, and advocacy skills, build family support and pride, build teamwork and trust among disability-related community organizations, and bottom line, help students with disabilities get an education and be able to get a job just like everyone else in our community. The next steps, we hope that tonight we would like to request a decision-making individual to work with the existing Project Hire El Paso partnership to formalize our plan. And our goal is to be able to come back to you in April with a formal plan and a recommendation for implementation of this support system. But we need participation from those decision makers at EPCC to help us to be able to develop this program and this support system. At this time, we'd like to open it up to see if anybody would have any quick questions. We know it's getting late, but we'd like to know if anybody has a quick question.
I have a question. Well, thank you for being so patient and waiting for such a long period of time. But my question would be, when we piloted the inclusion program at the Socorro School District way back when, and I think you remember because you were very young at that time, the first question that came out of everybody's mouth is, they're going to put these people with disabilities in my classroom, yes, and what am I supposed to do with them? Can you elaborate a little bit more on the coach, that you're talking about? Because I'm sure that some of our faculty will say, well, yeah, they should get an education, but not in my classroom,
Yes.
unless
Well,
they have the support.
the educational coach is actually very similar to what in employment we call a job coach, and it's to help a person learn their job and be successful, not only on the job, but you and I know that there's many issues, many difficulties that all students run into with transportation, with financial aid, with even social interaction and things, everyday kinds of things. So an educational coach would be there to provide the support. But the other thing that unfortunately we didn't have time to talk about is how do we prepare faculty members? How do we provide them training and awareness training and give them also some support so that when these students come into their classroom with an educational coach, that they know how to work with not only the student, but also the educational coach who is there to provide the support to the student. So again, that's what this partnership, this committee would do, is to really begin to look at all the different components, the details, the things that we need to address to make this successful.
So do you have kind of a clear picture of what kind of certifications you're looking at, or is that why you're asking for someone from the college to join the partnership?
You know what? I really believe that all certification programs should be available. We know that some are going to be under the TSI requirements that require students to take the TSI. You already have some students in those programs. Unfortunately, I know from students that I know of, they struggle and they don't always complete those programs. So you already have students in those programs that I think could benefit also from educational coaches. But we have a whole group of people, and those are the individuals that I want you to remember about this evening. They're students with intellectual disabilities and other developmental disabilities who, as one of the gentlemen said, have been underserved. And there's really no other programs in our community to give them that opportunity. So many of our kids graduate from high school to sit at home. Their education ends, their training ends, because there's nothing in the community to really meet their needs. So I would say that we would probably need to begin with some certificate programs with a focus on some of them and really make this a successful model and then try to expand it. I could see it expanding even to the regular programs, because I think some of our students just need that little extra additional support. Debbie, I don't want to talk.
No, you're fine. You're doing fine. No, just to summarize, we're not looking at modifying any of the the courses or anything. It's just accommodations, and the accommodation is in the form of an educational coach to address their individual needs. If you give them that support, then the individual is more likely to be successful. And that's all we're requesting. It's not a modification to any of your courses or your programs. It's just providing that accommodation and support so they can be successful. Thank you.
Dr. Graham, perhaps a question for you as well as our guests. The high school diploma is a traditional high school diploma with a date of graduation. Mm-hmm. So
yes.
Title IV Pell is not an issue then. That's a couple of things. I know that federal financial aid, the ability to benefit designation is now apparently being proposed to come back, which I'm a proponent of. But if their high school diploma indicates that they are an actual high school graduate, then they would qualify for Title IV. The only reasonable accommodation that I could see, again, in compliance with ADA laws, would be additional time for test taking, things of that nature, which we already have in place now, serving our disabled population.
Yes, sir. And yes, every student that graduates, including students with disabilities, it doesn't matter if you were top 5%, 10%, or you just graduated by the skin of your teeth.
Right.
Your diploma says you graduated like everybody else. A diploma will not tell you really that you were in special education or you received. It's a diploma for all. The STEPS program that I mentioned to you at El Paso Community College, at Austin Community College, that really was a program that it created. It's a separate program. And that requires, of course, a lot more resources, a lot more planning, but it's been very successful. And I understand through financial aid, once a community college establishes a program, they can apply to become a certified transition program, which means that they can qualify under financial aid, even in those instances where the programs are totally specialized programs for people with disabilities. So I think the options are there. It's a matter of getting together, putting our heads together and working it out and putting together a plan that we can come back and present to you in the near future. Okay?
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your time and your presentation.
Debbie and I would like to thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to coming back and sharing with you more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 1.8, communications, none. Item 1.9, Board of Trustees business. Item 1.9.1, the Board of Trustees will deliberate on setting and otherwise calling elections for the following single-member electoral districts, Districts 2 and 3. The Board of Trustees may also deliberate on establishing polling places and early voting locations.
Motion to approve item 1.9.1 and 1.9.2.
Item 1.9.2, the Board of Trustees will deliberate on authorizing the execution of a contract with the Department of Elections of El Paso County, Texas, in an amount not to exceed $55,000 to conduct elections for Districts 2 and 3 and to appoint the recommended election personnel, Central Counting Station Manager, Central Counting Station Judge, Early Voting Ballot Board Chairman, and Tabulating Supervisor, judges and alternate judges, the Signature Verification Committee, and the Early Voting Ballot Board and Canvassing Board, and to adopt any other orders necessary to conduct such elections.
Questions, comments, anything? Okay. Question, Pam?
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer.
Aye.
Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Mr. Fierro.
Aye. Pam, we're going to add 1.9.3, please. Dr. Graham would like to bring something up.
This is more a question for Dr. Serrata. Where are we on the revisions or the establishing of an effective grievance procedure? I know that we talked about getting it reviewed way back a few months ago, and we've been on this for several years before you came on board, and we're still talking about it. Can we put a deadline on this?
I think it's well said that we put a deadline, Dr. Graham. Currently, we were attempting to develop a subcommittee of this board, asking you and Mr. Dunbar and I to review potential external reviewers to come in and look at our grievance policy, provide recommendations, interview with each of the respective constituency groups and get their input on this, and then bring it forward. I would say that we have it a recommendation that we have for an external consultant to come in by the next board meeting. I feel confident we can get that done. And then after that, we'll have to let them do their work. But I would imagine that we should be able to come forward with modifications and recommendations to that particular policy, going through all of the college procedures for policies no later than this summer.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Item 1.10, Board Reports. Item 1.10.1, Treasurer's Report, October 31st, November 30th, and December 31st, 2014. No action is necessary. Item 1.11, Consent Docket.
Is there anything to check?
Not on mine.
Second. Who made the motion?
Pam, is there anything checked on there?
Yes.
Yes, there's item 3.2 and I believe.
Okay. Motion to approve, and I think we have a second.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer.
Aye.
Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Mr. Fierro.
Aye.
Item 3.1, full-time institutionally funded actions.
Move to approve, except for the position on page 118 for the intern director, dual credit, and early college high school program
Second.
administrator.
We have one addition to that, please.
Also, on page 119, the technical support specialist, that's the one you were...
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer.
Aye.
Mrs. Quintanilla. Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Mr. Fierro.
No?
Item 3.3, information items, no action is required. Item 4.1, consideration and deliberation on the approval to purchase 30 vehicles from various dealers for district use in an amount not to exceed $638,827 in the aggregate.
Motion to approve item 4.1 and 4.2?
Second.
I have a question on 4.1.
Let Pam read 4.2, please, Judge.
Okay.
Item 4.2, consideration and deliberation on the approval of a campus-wide annual support agreement with Oracle Corporation in the amount of $534,356.
Judge?
Under 4.1, what percentage of, how many vehicles does the college have?
Mr. Haggerty, we currently operate a fleet of 111 vehicles altogether. We have really for the last 2 years been working diligently to reduce that fleet. At one point we had a total of 187 vehicles. The 76 vehicles that have been culled from the fleet have actually been auctioned, and the proceeds from the sale of those vehicles have gone back into the vehicle replacement fund.
We brought this up in the past. Why are we buying 30 vehicles at a time? Why aren't we replacing 5 vehicles a year or $638,000? And then we're going to, 5 years from now, those 30 vehicles are all, why aren't we rotating these vehicles out on a yearly basis instead of coming up with this? We had this discussion before.
Well, one of the things that the college has been guilty of really is running our vehicles into the ground until they're so
and that's why I'm so upset. We've had
unsafe.
This discussion 20 years ago when we were buying all these cop cars, 80 at a time. Every year we should be replacing the ones that need to be replaced, but not at $600,000 a pop. It's not, this is mind-boggling to me.
Okay, any other questions?
Unbelievable.
Okay, Pam?
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer.
Aye.
Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
No to 4.1 and yes to 4.2.
Mr. Fierro.
Aye.
Item 4.3, consideration and deliberation on the approval to purchase digital and offset print jobs from various print companies during fiscal year 2014-15 in an annual aggregate amount not to exceed $195,000.
To approve 4.3 and 4.4.
Second.
Item 4.4, consideration and deliberation on the approval to purchase network equipment for the renovation of the Valle Verde Student Services Center from Sigma Technology Solutions Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $113,429.
Questions?
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer.
Aye.
Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Mr. Fierro.
Aye.
Item 4.5, consideration and deliberation on the approval to contract AC&J Communications doing business as MetroCom for data phone cabling and cable management for the renovation of the Valle Verde Student Services Center in an amount not to exceed $62,919.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer. Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Mr. Fierro.
Aye.
Item 4.6, consideration and deliberation on the approval to accept a donation of pilot funds from the Housing Authority of the City of El Paso in the amount of $43,364.
I'd like to remind the board that this is the item that we approve every year. Well, we don't approve, we just,
We table it.
yeah. Thank you, Dr. Graham.
No, just don't vote.
Right. Next question.
Item 5.1, consideration and deliberation on the approval to enter into a construction contract with ESA Construction Incorporated for the renovation of the data center located at the ASCA building in an amount not to exceed $676,000.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer. Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty. Mr. Fierro.
Aye.
Item 6.1, consideration and deliberation on the approval of an increase in an amount not to exceed $31,223 to EBSCO contract for periodical services for the college libraries.
Motion to approve item 6.1 and 6.2?
Second.
Item 6.2, consideration and deliberation on the acceptance of a grant award from J.P. Morgan Chase Foundation in the amount of $50,000.
Questions, comments? Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, we'd like to recognize the principal of our Cotton Valley Early College High Schools, Dr. Sam Hogue. Thank you for being here.
You're just going to take your check and leave.
I know.
You're welcome to say a few words if you'd like.
Ms. Chavez, thank you for being here.
Board Chair Fierro, members of the board, President Serrata. On behalf of Cotton Valley Early College High School, I want to thank you for the support of our campus and our students, as well as our faculty and staff. This grant that we are going to receive will go towards mainly for STEM improvements. We do have a new science lab within the last couple of years at Cotton Valley. We are still in the process of equipping that lab and getting various science materials and things needed for that lab. We also have used it for various technology equipment and items like that. So we do want to thank you with much gratitude on behalf of Cotton Valley.
Thank you. And Pam, you can give him the check now.
We miss you at Enders. You just disappeared on us out there.
We need him at Cotton Valley, Judge.
Pam, call the question, please.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer.
Aye.
Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Mr. Fierro.
Aye.
Item 6.3, consideration and deliberation on the acceptance of a grant award from the Institute for Mexicans Abroad, IME, to provide educational opportunities to Mexican immigrants to obtain an elementary and/or secondary diploma from the Secretaría de Educación de Mexico in the amount of $23,600.
Approve 6.3, 7.1, and 7.2.
Second.
Item 7.1, consideration and deliberation on the approval of continuing education tuition rates for new courses. Item 7.2, consideration and deliberation on the approval of continuing education rates for revised courses.
Questions? Nope.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer.
Aye.
Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Mr. Fierro.
Aye.
Item 8.1, consideration and deliberation on the acceptance of a grant award from the Defense Logistics Agency, Department of Defense, for the Contract Opportunity Center in the amount of $292,946.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Mrs. Robles.
Aye.
Dr. Uxer. Mrs. Quintanilla.
Aye.
Dr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Haggerty.
Aye.
Mr. Fierro.
Aye. Thank you, Pam.
Motion to adjourn.
Board meeting.
No.
Our next meeting will be February 25th at 5 p.m.
5:30.
Okay. Motion second, adjourn.
Everyone in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait past me a bit.
Ya me dio.
You can see all the whole family.
It'd be like going for me. It'd be like going for me.